Yarny friends, I'm Sara Sach. Welcome or welcome back to my crochet channel. I'm so glad you're here. Today's video is our this or that video. And what that means is I usually ask you a question and I give you the opportunity to answer the question down in the notes underneath the video, underneath in that comment section. And I do really love to read your comments. And I think that I've learned a lot from you all, what you're looking for when it comes to crochet and yarn. And I hope that I've been able to answer some of your questions, because that's kind of what the this and that video is all about. Asking questions, answering questions, and learning from each other. And I have. I hope you have too. Well, today we're going to do something just a little bit different. I'm calling it Busting the Myths About Crochet. There's a lot of things out there that people say about crochet, and most of the time it's people who don't crochet. We all probably know better, but I'm curious about, what your answers will be. I've actually got 5 questions again, and we're just going to jump right into it, but I do want to remind you that when it comes to our this and that videos, there are no wrong answers. None whatsoever. We all have opinions, we all have thoughts and ideas, and that's why I say we can always learn from each other. Question number 1. One of the myths that I want to bust is that crochet is just for old ladies who sit in rocking chairs. And I know that's how it's been portrayed on TV and commercials and in different places and books and things. And that's true. Some old ladies love to crochet. But I learned to crochet when I was very young. And I have a friend at church who's about 12, and she crochets. She's not old. And one of the neat things about crochet right now is it's really hot out there. You can see it in department stores. You can see it all over the place, fashion shows and things like that. So the number 1 crochet myth I want to bust is that crochet is just for old ladies, because it's not. Now, I'm 60. I consider myself a middle-aged lady. It's okay. I don't feel old. You can see I'm getting some gray hairs. But it's okay. I'm going to crochet until I am dead, okay? So just remember, crochet is for everyone. And it's very important that we pass that on to the younger kiddos that are learning to crochet. And a lot of schools have started to incorporate crochet in their art classes. Okay? And so let's push it. Let's push crochet to the young people, because it really is a wonderful fiber art. I've got some fun props here. These are huge knitting needles. These are 15 millimeter knitting needles that I bought from Michael's a few years back. And I've got my huge, let's see, this is a 19 millimeter crochet hook. And I brought these out as visual aids because one of the myths that I want to bust is that everybody gets mad when you call crochet knitting. So let's talk about that. One time I was sitting at my church when we used to live up in Colorado. I was sitting in the back crocheting away on something, and one of the gentlemen come up and said, "What are you knitting?" And I said, "Well, I'm crocheting." And he's like, "Oh, aren't they the same thing?" And I'm like, "No. One you use 2 sticks, one you use a crochet hook." A lot of people call this a crochet needle. It's okay. I don't care about that. But what I'm trying to say is this. No, knitting and crochet are maybe not the same here in America, but in other places, knitting is a genre of fiber arts, and crochet falls under that. And so when they're talking about knitting, they're just talking about doing art with yarn, okay? And so whether it's crochet or maybe tatting or loom knitting or knitting, a lot of those things just fall right under the category of knitting. Okay, so, but if it bothers you, don't feel bad if you correct someone, but I would encourage you that when you do correct someone and say, "I'm not knitting, I'm crocheting, it has a hook," that we do that in kindness and not in rudeness, because the truth of the matter is, I look at it this way. They're asking a question or maybe they're making a statement, I can educate them about what is crochet and what is knit in a kind way. We don't need to be rude or unkind, and they're not meaning anything by it, because most of the time when people ask me, it's not people who knit or crochet. Of course, it's people who don't. And then another time they'll say, well, can you teach me sometime? And I'll tell them about I have a basic, Back to Crochet Basics video series, 12 videos with 12 practice projects. Go look at it on YouTube. Super easy. You'll learn to crochet. What I'm saying about this is it's not really a myth buster, because people are always going to ask us that. They're just going to, because if they don't crochet or knit, it happens. But we don't have to be unkind about it. We can educate in a kind way. All right, number 3. The third myth that I want to bust about crochet is that crochet is holy, so it's not going to be warm. And that is definitely a myth, because this is a blanket that I made. Isn't it beautiful? This is the rectangle granny square, and I made this with Sweet Rolls Frosty, or frosting. Is it Frosty? Anywho, Premier Sweet Roll Frosting, and I love it, and it's warm and it's cozy. And one of the things that people don't understand is that when you make a blanket that has a little bit of holes in it and you wrap up in it, that warmth circulates in and out of those holes, and it's still going to keep you warm. Now, I'm not talking about big lacy blouses or ponchos or things like that, or a big lacy scarf. Those things aren't going to keep you warm because they do have large holes. They'll help you some. Believe me, if you've ever been outside and it's 60 degrees and you throw on one of those lacy shawls, it does help a lot, okay? But what I'm saying is, when you make something like a blanket and it has holes in it, it's still very warm. And so that busts the myth that crochet things are holy and they don't keep you warm. Alrighty, myth number 4. Myth number 4 is that there are a lot of people out there that don't appreciate homemade crochet items. And one of the things that people have said to me before is that people don't want your crochet items. They're just cheap. It's just, you've got yarn. It's just a cheap gift. Wrong. Have you ever priced yarn, is what I want to say to people. And I probably have. Yarn is not cheap, and neither is our time. I mean, the blanket that I just showed you, that took me about 6 hours to make. Think about this. If you worked for a company, and let's just say you made $10 an hour. I worked 6 hours for $10 an hour. That's $60. And people make far more than $10 an hour nowadays. So that's $60 just for my time. That doesn't count the cost of the yarn, crochet hook, or tools, okay? So just remember, if somebody gives you something that they took the time to crochet, even if it might be from a little bit more inexpensive yarns, or maybe they got it on sale or something, it is not a cheap gift, because we're like everybody else. We have jobs, we have family, we have, friends, church activities, school activities. I mean, my daughter, between her one child being in all the bands, marching band, jazz band, and all that, the other child's in choruses and state and national choirs and stuff. They have no time. And my daughter still crochets a lot because she has her Etsy shop, but time is precious. And any time spent making something for me is so appreciated. And I've often thought about, one thing I do when I make something for somebody is I take the label like this. This is just one that I used this week. And on it, there are washing instructions. And I'll always give them the label so they know how to wash it, especially if it's for a baby, because if I'm making a baby blanket, they're going to want to wash that blanket, okay? Of course, we always want to wash our blankets occasionally. And I give them that, and then I usually give them a little note that says, this is my recommendation for washing. And because when we spend our time, we want something to last. We want them to enjoy it and and everything. And I've had blankets that I've given to my nieces and nephews that they still have, and my grandkids. My granddaughter took one of the baby blankets that I made for her when she was, I actually made it before she was born, and she put it in the corner of her bedroom, and they tacked it up with tacks, and she's got a bunch of her little squishy animals up there using her baby blanket, and she's 15. So, if you make it, they're going to love it, and it's going to last, but sometimes they don't appreciate it. And I really would love sometime, I've never done it, but I really would love sometime to put on there how many hours I spent making that particular item, just so they know. And I think that, this is another place where we can educate kindly, and someone says, you gave them homemade, pot holders for a wedding gift, or you gave them a blanket, or I don't know, baby bonnet. Say, well, I spent 10 hours making that, and my time's not cheap, So, I mean, we can educate people kindly, but to be honest with you, a lot of people just aren't going to appreciate it. But the myth that I'm trying to bust here is this: crochet items are not cheap. Yarn is expensive, and so is our time. All right, so number 5, the last myth I want to bust is that you have to block everything. You don't have to block anything, actually. Blocking is just a way, and all I do when I block is I pin it to a board like this. I spritz a little water on it. I don't put any sizing, any starch, or anything on it unless I'm making like an ornament that I want to stiffen up. And then I use 50% Elmer's glue and 50% water, and then I mix in a little bit of glitter. Okay? And if you forget to put the glitter in, you can put the glitter in on it afterwards before it dries, and then it will stick. Anyway, you don't have to block anything. It's just a way of crisping it up. And a lot of times like these are our block of the month that we're doing, our square of the month, I mean. And I do block these because it's easier when you're making a blanket if everything lines up nice and neatly. But when it comes to blocking like blankets or anything like that, I really don't. Unless it's just not laying square or whatever. And a blanket, what I do with that, I do the same thing. I lay it out across my bed, and I spritz it, and then I put the fan on it. And I know that sounds weird, but you're just putting enough water on it just to get it a little bit damp. And you don't want it to soak into your bed, your bedspread. You just want it to be, and then you stretch it, and I pin it down on the bedspread with my straight pins, and then I put my fan on. I have a stand-up fan, and I put my fan on it so it can dry, and that will help it keep its shape. But the truth is, you don't have to block anything. A lot of people will say, well, I just don't want to have to take the time to block it. I don't want to. You don't have to. It's kind of like a special extra thing to do. And I do it when I'm going to give gifts, especially. Maybe I made a bonnet and it's not laying exactly the way I want it to. And so I'll spritz it a little bit with water and shape it. I do that with hats sometimes. If for some reason it's puckered in the back or something, or it's just not laying right, I'll spritz the hat. I have a styrofoam head that I use, and I'll put it on the styrofoam head, and I'll just set it in front of the fan. A lot of times when I block something like these when I use these blocking boards, I'll spritz them with spritz it, and set it on my dryer. And then the next time I do laundry, I've got heat coming up through the dryer to help dry that. And if the dryer doesn't work, I'm setting that out for like 24 hours is all. And that one's still left on the board because I was too lazy to take it off. When I do the squares, a lot of times I'll do one, then I'll do the next one, then I'll do the next one, But these are really great blocking boards. I got these at Michael's many years ago, and it was like a pack of 4 or 5. And they all snap together. So if I have a bigger project, like say a sweater or something, or a shawl, I can put them all together. But you don't have to have a blocking board. You can use cardboard and a towel. And a lot of times I just put a bath towel out on my counter, and I'll lay out what I want flat, and I'll pin it to the towel, and then I'll put the other towel on top of it and leave it set for 24 hours. And again, I only spritz my things with water. I don't put anything else in it. It's just a means to... So we talked about 5 myth-busting things or myth-busting questions that I came up with. But do you have any questions that you would like to know, is this true or not? Is it real? You know, people tell me this about crochet. Is it the truth? Feel free to put those down in the comments underneath. And remember, I always say there are no wrong answers, but there's no wrong questions either. If you have a question, you ask it. If I don't know the answer, I will do my very best to find one for you. All right? Well, thanks for being with me today, and I hope that did answer a few questions for you. Have a great day.